We expected the fog, but it's really getting pretty tough to travel in spots.
As an Xbox user, I have not only been deprived of the good Silent Hill games for years, but was also deprived of the Silent Hill 2 remake when it was first released. Thankfully, this would change about a year later, and I've now had a chance to play two great Silent Hill games, the 2 remake and Silent Hill F. And I wanted to spend some time talking today about this new era of Silent Hill games. So grab a health drink, pop a red capsule, and think about what you've done and what your life has become. This is modern Silent Hill. It makes so much sense for Konami to start with a remake of Silent Hill 2, as the original is so massively praised, yet is not very accessible to play nowadays. The version I played is the infamous HD remaster. And obviously, it's still an amazing game. It's a perfect pairing of an amazing story and gameplay that works hand in hand with that story, which enriches the feeling of both gameplay and story, making for a masterpiece. However, as is only natural, there are certainly signs of its age. For the modern casual gamer, it can be a bit obtuse at times. I myself had a bit of a hard time getting into it. And when it comes to remakes, I'm of the mind that sure, they can be cash grabs, but they're a great opportunity to take a game that was great in its time and touch it up to make it a great experience for modern audiences. The Resident Evil 2 remake is one of my favorite games. And overall, this is a fantastic remake. I was immediately sucked in as the opening area is just so spot on yet modernized. I love the updated design of James. He can be a lot more emotive now. I love that the map gets updated a lot more as you explore, and there are great animations of James adding notes to it. When it comes to the visuals and gameplay, everything you could hope for from a modernization of Silent Hill 2 was done here. The environments are either faithfully adapted or, in my opinion, improved upon. And story wise, they were faithful to the source material and did a good job. Just like the original, you feel that what you're doing and what you're fighting is for a reason that unfolds as you find out more information. And that alone was key to what made the game so effective for me. This is something that Silent Hill F does amazing with as well. And the combat feels great compared to the original as you're given a lot more control over what you're doing. One nitpick I do have though is that the guns have this kind of weak, hollow feeling to them. I noticed it first with the handgun and then even more so with the shotgun. And especially considering how good the melee feels, these guns were just a disappointment. Now, the next thing I wanted to touch on is the weirdness factor. I personally wouldn't have minded if they pushed things just slightly in a weirder direction with the remake. It is still a weird game in the grand scheme of games, but it's definitely not weirder than the original game. I get that it's a remake, and they definitely get criticism if they were less subtle than the original, or if they made any significant changes, really. So I get why they generally wanted to be more faithful to the original. But what I do not like are the ways that the remake is more understated than the original, which brings me to probably my biggest personal disappointment with this one, and that is the way that Pyramid Head and some of the sexual themes in general are just a bit sanitized from the way they were in the original game. This is a creative decision that I just don't agree with. I think for a remake of a horror game to be less disturbing and less scary than the original in some regards just feels like a miss. I'm not saying this ruined the game or anything, and in other aspects, I do think the remake is scarier, but this was just one aspect I think they could have gotten better. I don't know if they didn't want to alienate certain players by pushing things too far. I just think it could have been a bit more disturbing than it was. And I don't like sick, twisted content just for the sake of it, but that's not what the first game did at all. It was thought provoking in its disturbing elements. And I feel like a modern version of the game should try to do that even more effectively rather than less. Moving on, one last very small nitpick I had. I hate how the default settings have your controller vibrating anytime you do anything. It was so annoying. Even in the menu screens, every single button, movement, thing you select, it vibrates. So I did turn that off, but that was just very odd to me. And they have all the different endings here. My favorite being the in water ending and the leave ending. Now, I'm a bit torn on this, but do think I prefer the leave ending. Even though the in water ending seems to be the most true one based on what I've seen the creators say. And that does seem to make the most sense. I feel like the ways you get the leave ending, though, feel more true to what we know of James's character and what the game tells us about him. It also is longer than the other endings. It feels fuller and just more satisfying as a player. But I can't really picture James just going on with his life after the leave ending. I do find it difficult to believe, even though I prefer seeing a more positive ending for him. I wonder if that's just the reason why there were multiple endings in the original Silent Hill 2, because no one ending feels completely right at the end of this messed up story the player experiences. I really enjoyed my second playthrough of Silent Hill 2 Remake, as there are some differences from the first playthrough thrown in here and there, which I enjoyed to see quite a bit. But as the game is a bit longer, I personally didn't feel the need to play more than twice in order to see all the other endings. This was not the case with Silent Hill F. Now, I do love this game. I knew it was a tad bit controversial for many reasons, but I was just so curious about it, I had to play it for myself. I avoided hearing anything about it as much as possible, and I gotta say, I'm really glad I went in semi blind. I don't have very deep roots with this series, so I don't mind that it doesn't take place in Silent Hill, which is one of the things hardcore fans of the series didn't like. There are other connections to the Silent Hill universe that others more familiar with the lore have pointed out. Another common criticism of F that seems almost universal is of the combat. I believe this might partly be due to the difficulty options given, as they call them the normal difficulty story. Now, everyone's different. I usually play on normal mode on a first playthrough of a new game, but I was very close to playing on hard mode for this just because it felt wrong to pick story. I'm sure a lot of people picked hard mode when they normally would have picked normal. Hard mode requires that you spend a longer time fighting the enemies, and I can see that making the combat feel more tedious and monotonous. Luckily, I checked Reddit to see what's the deal, and I saw multiple people recommending that you play story on your first playthrough. So that's what I did, and boy, am I glad. For me, it felt like a good, normal difficulty, and I thought for a first playthrough it was perfect. And yes, the combat did not feel bad to me. I loved collecting the Omamori and pairing them together to make myself stronger and give myself more options while fighting enemies. And with each playthrough, I collected more and more of these things and found new combinations that let me do things differently. I really enjoyed it. But if you played the game only once on hard mode, I totally understand hating the combat and not wanting to play the game again. Much less 4 times to see all the endings, which got to be a lot even for me. I want to make sure I mention how much I loved the documents and notes you collect in this game. Because the game's story is so good and it is so methodical in how it reveals information, gathering and reading these things word for word was so much fun. This stood out to me as I have a hard time wanting to read notes in most games. For example, in the Dead Space remake, they throw tons and tons of notes at you constantly, and I don't believe I ever read a single word. But the story in F had me at the edge of my seat, and when I wasn't playing it, I was thinking about it. And speaking of weirdness, there are some really uncomfortable scenes in this game. I wasn't sure if this story was going to work by the end, but I was really satisfied once I got the full story. Now, the first ending is just insane and super memorable. I love it even more within the context of seeing all the other endings. Now, the second and third playthroughs and corresponding endings were very enjoyable to me, as certain things are actually different every time you play. You learn more about the characters and overall story, and there are a couple new places you can go, and some new things you can and need to do in order to get the different endings. And of course, there are some new notes and cutscenes here and there. Now, the fourth ending, which is the good ending, is just awesome. At points, it brought tears to my eyes. A lot of it was what I had been hoping for as I made new and different choices following my first playthrough. The only problem I had with my fourth playthrough is that I was now on my fourth playthrough. Now, the game isn't that long, and that's why I enjoyed playing it 3 times. But a fourth time to unlock the true ending was just asking a bit too much for me personally. I think that 3 total would have made for a better experience, and I would have made getting the third ending optional, as that was probably my least favorite of all of them. But aside from that, I still loved seeing the new additions to the fourth playthrough and the fourth ending itself. Now, I do have one kind of issue with the good ending. Skip ahead to this timestamp if you don't want spoilers for the fourth ending. I do love this ending. I think it's almost perfect. It's nice to see Hinako resolve to make her own choice. That's been her only desire this whole time, the freedom to make her own choice. And she actually basically says she's open to the possibility of getting married as long as it is what she really wants. Maybe even to the fox guy after she gets to know him. I really didn't expect this from this ending. And this really just shows how misguided the criticism of this game as being some kind of anti marriage propaganda was. I mean, imagine someone who played this game once and loved it because they think it's saying that men are evil and marriage is horrible, and then they get to the certified good ending where the main character doesn't seem to believe that at all. I'm pretty sure they would hate it. Now, here's my problem with this playthrough and ending, and admittedly, I am torn on it. The reveal that Hinako's father was actually never physically abusive to her mom felt kind of off to me. It was such a sweet scene between Hinako and her mom. I can't be that mad at it, as this was one of the moments that I found the most moving in the whole game. But it does just feel a little off to me story wise, like a cop out to make the good ending even more positive. They don't make it out like he's actually been this great dad and husband the whole time, but they spend a lot of time sympathizing with him and letting us know that he was not as horrible as we have been led to believe until now. This really affects the tone of this ending and the story quite a bit for me. And when I think back to that first ending, it captured such a visceral feeling of rage, and it was so powerful. You get a taste of how insane and horrible you would feel in this situation. And it felt like it was giving a voice to this particular struggle that surely many women have faced. And her parents played no small role in this. I just think that this tone worked better as an artistic statement than finding out that the dad was just trying to seem tough the whole time, and he actually apologized to the mom but covered it up. So I still love the first ending and the good ending the most. Despite the issues I do have, I still mostly enjoyed everything about the good ending, and it's nice to be able to see these different versions of the story. So yeah, I love modern Silent Hill. While neither of these games are perfect, they have made me an official fan of Silent Hill. I really enjoyed playing them both, and I can't wait for Townfall. Though at this point, it doesn't look like it will be released on Xbox at launch. How long will we be treated like second class citizens? Uh, they changed the logo, so things will be turning around soon, I hope. Speaking of Townfall, it does look sick. I do hope it doesn't turn out to be too much of a rehash of Silent Hill 2's story, but set in Scotland. This town is full of monsters. How can you sit there and eat bangers and mash? Based on what we know so far from the trailers, that is the vibe I get and one concern I do have story wise, but I'll keep an open mind. Anyway, that's about it. See ya. Last night we let the red light talk.